and we are live.
Can I get a motion to move forward with the book club, please?
Yes.
Second, Ms. Henry.
Mr. Heights, Ms. Weiss, Ms. Hubbard,
Here.
Ms. Fowler, Ms. Jones,
Here.
Mr. Davis,
Here.
Ms. Cousins,
Yes,
we have a quorum.
I will turn it over to you, Ms. Awesome Tilly.
I'm changing my name to that. There you go. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Cousins. I appreciate it. Before we jump in, there are two things that I'm going to ask us to kind of do before I start taking you through the pieces that I asked you to read for tonight. And actually, there are three things, but let me see if I can remember the first two. The first one is that I did not at our last session give you the opportunity, like I usually do, to be able just to give kind of your overall individual thoughts, feelings, something that stands out to you, that kind of thing from what you have been reading, what is striking a chord with you. And the other is that I want to provide some clarification and make sure that we're clear about what is meant by the moral imperative and how that connects to your district vision and mission. Because I think there was some confusion, not amongst the board members, but with your stakeholders about what was meant by making sure and creating and keeping as a part of your moral imperative the safety of all of your scholars. I know that was, a very important discussion that we had last time, and I didn't know if you wanted to be able to bring clarification or if you want me to about what was meant by all of that.
I think it would be helpful if we would bring clarification so that there's no misunderstanding.
Okay. And so when we talk about the moral imperative within the book and really within your governance practice, it goes back to, and this is, I'm on kind of your study guide, and it's page 1 and under chapter 1. And it's very clear about that the authors define a shared moral imperative to be a relentless commitment to the learning of all students, no exceptions. And you hold on to that piece of the moral imperative. But the other thing is that a lot of times, and that should be the moral imperative for like every school board in the country, right? And in the nation and really in the world. But what you brought to it also is a recognition of that you all have a moral imperative, not just to that statement, but also to about creating and making sure that there are safe and equitable learning spaces and environments for your kids. Am I correct in how I'm stating that? I just need, okay.
Yes,
So, because go ahead, Tony, I'm sorry.
I think that's perfectly stated, yes.
Okay. All right. Because I just don't want the idea to be, or the perception that you are excusing, poor academic performance or achievement and looking past that because these kids, a lot of these kids are having to live in, some and carry some childhood trauma. All right. As with them. And so there's even a research study that was done in Iowa called the Lighthouse Study. And what they found is that school boards that had the language of where they said, yes, we know that some of our kids have these particular traumas, these issues, these setbacks, but the expectation is still the same for all. All right. And that is high levels of learning. And so, all right, we're just clear. All right with that. Okay. All right. And so before, I kind of drag you into some of the questions that we're going to have tonight, because a lot of them are, my hope is that you were able to preview them, is that they are pretty, I don't want to say necessarily personal, but they're pretty close to how you operate and how you operate with each other and the relationship that you have with each other. And it's going to require grace, and it's going to require the fact that you're courageous in being able to be honest and forthcoming about what you're thinking and what you're feeling and what are your challenges, right? So I just know that it's, I think we had wonderful conversations last time that we met, and that it's going to be just as important to do that this time as well. So before we start into that particular piece, is there anything that is on your mind, in your thinking, that you think is critical and important with what you have been reading, that you really want to make sure that we emphasize and that we bring out and or discuss? And don't tell me it's all important. I know that. But surely there's something that has jumped out at you going, oh, okay, all right, maybe we should pay attention to that. Here goes Emily. Yeah. You going to talk to us, Emily? No?
I mean, I can, but mostly I was making it so I could see everyone's faces.
Oh, got it. Okay. Yeah. Okay, I'll start. How's that? All right. And that is that there are really kind of two things that from this particular book that stand out to me. And one of them is how these particular authors take you to the moral imperative rather than just talking about a vision and a mission and goals. Because I can't tell you how many district mission statements I have read, and they all read the same way, and people don't really invest too much in them. But when they framed it in the fact that it's about our ethics, we have a moral obligation because we have signed on as school board members to be able to provide, this level of education for our kids, for taking care of them, for their safety, for their emotional safety, their physical safety, all of those things. I never quite framed it in the fact that it was a moral imperative, because an imperative means that in actuality, you really shouldn't have a choice. You've got to do this. That's how critical and important it is. So that's one piece that really struck me. And then the other piece that has really standing out to me, not just from this book, but just from some things that have been going on in education in the last couple of months, is the critical importance of relationships. And that if you're looking for the silver bullet, the panacea for academic achievement for kids, it's about having a quality teacher in the classroom and that kid having a positive relationship with that teacher. And I think the same thing holds true. And I think in these chapters, they talk a lot about it, is about the relationship amongst the 8 of you, and how you interact and the level of trust that you have to have with each other to be able to do this work. So those are the two things that really stand out to me. And if I were going to take just two things away from it, it would be about the fact that we have got to be united around the moral imperative, all of us, and that we have to keep working on our relationships. Okay, so I gave you mine. Guess what? It's your turn now.
I think for me, when I first read this and started going in, when I first got on the board, it was easy. I think I stated this before. It was easy when you first come in, where you have that mindset that you kind of just focus on that particular space that you're in
Mm-hmm.
and not focus on the entirety, of the district. And kind of what you were saying, like you had to build those relationships and look at other perspectives. So oftentimes when you go in a situation, you have that, well, I'm just going to worry about mine, or I'm just going to focus on my school, or I'm just going to focus on my area. And the more you get into it in a position that we actually hold, when we're saying and thinking about the more imperative, you can't just focus on just that one individual area or that group or that person. Like not putting him out there, but you had asked a question like what grade was his children in, how were they, or whatever. It's kind of like we can't just focus on just our children. We have to focus on all the children within the district and ensuring that all the children are reaching the goal that they need to be reaching and get the adequate resources and academic support that they need for them to be successful. And coming into this space that can become challenging because you automatically have that mindset of just that, one area, one focus, because that's what you were accustomed to. So that's where that relationship building kind of comes. And as you read more into the chapters in this particular book, you kind of lean into what you're kind of strong in, your area of expertise. Like if I'm strong in community support or community engagement, then that's where I would try to lean in and provide that level of support in that area to make sure I'm leaning in to help across the board, if that makes sense.
It does. Yep. And there's that balance. They talk about in this particular section, they talk about the balance of the fact of that you can't turn off the fact that you're a parent, or you can't turn off the fact that you're an attorney. You bring that with you, right? But that there are, I don't know if it's parameters or boundaries or whatever, but Matt can't start doing legal stuff for the district, or saying, I think you should be doing it this way, as well, because it's obviously unethical, all right, to be able to do. But it's hard. You can't turn off being a mom. You can't turn off being a grandma, or whatever. But it is about understanding that, yes, that's important, but it expands to the whole. It's that whole thing about what, there's a wonderful book that was written about where it talks about our kids, and it's like when, I'm, Donna and I are about the same age, but when we were growing up, we ran the neighborhood and everybody's parents were our parents, all of my neighbors were. And you went out in the morning and, in the summertime, and you came back, at dinner time, or maybe you ate at the neighbor's house. But we had that idea of that we all belonged to each other. And that whole mentality is gone. Not completely, but in a great many ways it is. So, yep. Okay, I'll be quiet here.
I go back to this book all the time, especially when things happen that I try to make sense of and see if we're, I feel like we're doing the right thing or I'm not sure. But there's a part, and I'm jumping ahead in chapter 7, and it's just a brief one where it talks about community leadership throughout, and basically it's almost like an add-on, but like, oh, and all of this during this whole time, all of this is to set you up so you can have leadership in the community, that you can tell them, explain to them what you're doing, that the board is unified in what they're doing. We had the union had a lunch today for legislators, and Tony and I stopped in, and I was thinking about how different it is from when we started, because when we started, it was such a weird relationship with our legislators, and they did not understand what an elected school board's role was in the community. And I feel like we've spent the last 2 years, and it doesn't feel like we've been educating them, it's been building relationships. But doing this, I was walking out and I got in the car. I'm like, man, this is a lot easier than it used to be because now, it's like a real conversation. Like we understand what they're doing and what they're up against, and they understand what we're doing and what we're up against. And they really wanted to try to sort of, make sure that they're there to problem solve with us. And that is completely different from the first time that we had one of these breakfasts or lunches. And that's not everybody. Like obviously there's local politicians in our city, and then certainly the ones in Jefferson City who are you can't have that relationship because they're not interested in it because it's not beneficial to them politically. But as long as we have that baseline of a unified purpose, a clear and coherent strategy, and that we do our public debates, but then we come together and we know that we are going to be unified in our decisions, we're really kind of protected, I think, from a lot of the noise. And then when it talks about, how the board works with the superintendent on the community, I think that's one of our roles. And it's that's sort of a bubble of protection that we're all pointed in the same direction, but we're bringing the community along with us.
Yeah. I think of Dr. Scarlett's graphic with all the arrows, I go back to that, and it's like, they're starting to point up, and in the same direction as well. That was there was a question that I had, and it was really under chapter 1. I think that maybe it was, I don't know, but I ask you on page 57, this is about the superintendent's mindset, and they give, the examples from these different superintendents about, how they work with their board. But in that very first paragraph, this particular superintendent talks about something called, and he doesn't really define it, but I just thought it was an interesting term that he used. But he said it was talking about relational capital with an A, or assets. And he describes, I think, a lot, Matt, like what you were really talking about just now, about the fact that here was this urban district in California, had all of these challenges. And so, but then they're doing exactly what Dr. Scarlett is leading you to do, and that is having targeted initiatives, or you have your targeted goals, okay, student goals, rooted in student data. And then, so anyway, just talking about that whole process of kind of aligning those particular arrows, and then creating this relational capital that was built over several years by working with stakeholders and, most importantly, the governing board. The thing of it is that it takes time, and it takes a whole lot of work, okay, to do. Miss Donna, were you about to say something? Did I interrupt you?
No, you didn't. I was just giving a lot of thought to the ideal of relationship building. As we speak right now, we have another school board that is meeting with their students, with their families, to talk about the relationships that their students have with each other. And I'm thinking, I'm thinking about the question I heard when I was listening to the news was, what is leading our students to not have a great relationships with one another? And I asked myself, as a board member, when we make decisions, are our decisions creating an environment that build great relationships, help students build relationships with one another? That where, like you talked about back in the day, where there weren't cell phones, and when you have a group of kids or people and everybody's on the cell phone now and nobody's really talking to one another, and the pure lack of communication, how important it is as a board that we really, really are able to understand one another. That's why a lot of times I get quiet and I close my eyes and I try to listen past the noise, so I can really have an understanding of what my board members are saying and the public is saying, because I just feel like we are at an emergency, a critical point in this community, because to me, it's important to see that leadership in this community that we're servicing has not really paid attention to our young people the way that they need to. They're not being listened to. And I want to be a better listener. And so that's where I'm going into this tonight, become a better listener. And I think I'm going to be leading with my heart. I know we're looking at the data and that what have you. We've had that all along, and that's important, but we're losing kids all along the way. We have people with degrees, multiple degrees and education and all of that, but are we really listening? So this conversation is real important to me tonight.
I love to watch you think, Donna, because I can always tell, you can see it in your eyes when you're doing that. So I just want you to know that that's one piece of you amongst many things that I certainly love and respect, because I know that.
I'm praying a lot because
Okay. And so one of the things I'm gonna, Matt, when you were talking about, the relationship and things like that with the union, I'm gonna ask, if you reflect back over the last 2 years, in order to get to that particular point, what do you think has happened that has created that kind of tighter connection and relationship?
With the union or with the legislators?
Well, maybe both.
Okay.
What's different?
I like you said, it takes time, and I feel like it's time. It also takes effort. And the one thing that I think that we've tried to do is to take back our narrative, to tell our story, and to really tell the truth. I don't think people, especially in Jefferson City, I don't think they take that job because, they certainly don't do it for the money. They don't do it because, Jefferson City is a convenient place to get to from St. Louis. Or, especially if you're a legislator from the city, you don't do it because you're going to go up there and get a lot of respect. They care about their city, and, I think, and they certainly care about their neighborhoods, and the schools are the center of the neighborhoods. And, and we talk about this all the time. Elected officials in the city have been kind of given a pass. They've been able to ignore the schools, and like what Donna was saying, really just sort of ignore the youth. And you see that in the data. You see that in the fact that everybody took their kids and left the city, enough. And so I don't think that the people that run for office, they do it out of sort of convenience, but I don't think they really want to do it. And so it's been, just sort of a mutual sort of relationship and respect building. I think that, like, hey, we're here to put in this work. We're serious about it. We understand the issues that you've got, but also you need to help us with the issues that you helped create, and that the city and the state has helped create in this. And so it's just a lot of honesty, I feel like. And it wasn't for everybody, it's not 100%. But the people that we started out who had I don't know if it's animosity or just like, maybe it was just ignorance, like, because they could, like, no one was holding them accountable to interact with the school district. And we've at least, I think, established a way that they can interact, and they've been really, kind of excited about it. They still complain, but we, a lot of times it's justified. And then if we're able to help them work it out or explain it, a lot of times it's just educating them. Like, well, this is this way because the law you passed, not necessarily because of what we've done. I don't know, that's kind of a long rambling answer.
No, I get it. It's and I'm trying to find I have a question in here about trust, and this is it's in chapter 5, but this is like pages 87 to 107. And that one of their researchers says something about that collaboration moves at the speed of trust. All right. So part of what has taken so long, obviously, is probably the building of trust. But then I go on to talk about, that Aristotle defines that trust is built upon 3 principles. One of them is competence of the individual. One of them is the character. All right. And the other is about their compassion. And so if those are the foundations, just think about any politician that you trust, and then maybe a politician you don't trust is easier. And they are probably lacking in all 3, or at least 2 of those characteristics or whatever. Okay. And so I asked you, and this is where I'm going to ask you to be pretty honest with me, but if you could rate the level of trust among members of your governance team and between the governance team and the stakeholders, where do you think it would be? Let's start with stakeholders first, and then we'll come to you as a team.
I'd like to say 5.
Out of a range of what, Donna, 1 to 10? Okay.
Yeah, I think we're halfway there. They're waiting for proof.
And what do you think that they're waiting for? What's the proof they're waiting for?
Results, the way their children perform, the way the community will change.
Yep.
So, because, like I said before, so many things are not going well for our children in this community. It's not family friendly, and it's not just with the schools. So we're going to play a big part, but the community as well. We have so many other issues with our students, our scholars, but we're working. We've been working really hard on it, but I think we're halfway there because we have great leadership. Now, I think Dr. Scarlett of course, she's not a miracle worker, and it's going to take a great team, and she's building a great team. And I think we're halfway there. It's just when the rubber meets the road, we're getting there right now.
Yep. Yeah. Other thoughts? I can't tell if Emily's going to talk to us or if she's
I'm talking.
okay.
I do agree with Miss Donna. I think people are still kind of dubious about us and our leadership. And, we have to prove that we're trustworthy. And that means getting results for the kids.
Right. Okay, I'm going to turn this inward for a little bit, and this is going to be uncomfortable, but I'm going to ask anyway. And that is, let's talk about the level of trust that you have amongst each other and with each other. And you don't have to give it a score unless you want to, but how do you think you're doing with that? What are areas where we can continue to grow?
I'll say I feel I mean, I trust this board is here for the right reasons, and I trust that we are aligned in what we want to accomplish. The thing I think I've been struggling with is I've been putting in a lot of time on sport for the last 2.5 years, and I don't know if there's a commitment from all the board members, and I don't know if there has to be, but I just don't see the commitment to putting in the work from everybody. And that maybe that's okay, but there's times I resent it a little bit.
And when you talk about commitment to the work, you're talking about the commitment to the work of the board, the things the
I
board
mean,
needs to do.
I've missed half of a meeting the entire time I've been on this board. Those are formal meetings. I don't think I've missed any of the other informal meetings that fill up my calendar all the time. I formed a committee that I've stayed with and I think has done results in terms of the legislative committee. But sometimes I feel like, if I don't take some of this on, we're just not going to do it. And if we don't do it, then I fear that we're not going to be working at the high level for the systems change that we need, like the book talks about.
Okay.
Because it is a lot to learn. There's something that I learn every day. This is a complicated school system, and listen, it is unfair. One of the legislators brought it up today, how unfair it is, and it wasn't me, but how unfair it is that we do this job as volunteers, for how much work it is. And I was glad that she recognized that. We weren't complaining, but I was glad that she saw it. But I just think that it would be better if there was a way that all 7 of us had a clear role to pick up some of the slack, and that's just not happening.
Yeah. And some of your constituents, even in St. Louis, don't realize that you're not paid for any of this, that this is all unpaid, and you have been criticized for being, these high paid school board officials. I don't know what you're getting, but it ain't much. So you might get a snack or something here or there, but that's it. So let's kind of go back a little bit about and again, in talking about trust, what you brought up, Matt, is about kind of everyone fulfilling what they have promised that they would do in being elected to the school board as well. So this is why sometimes it's really important. This is why they go into talking about kind of the thing about standards or principles and norms and protocols. And I guess I'm kind of asking you if there were some key protocols that you would like to say, these are things that we each individually as a board member need to be doing, kind of, and no excuses for not doing so. What do you think those would be? I have some in my head, but
I think at the very basic level, everybody needs to read the consent agenda and the supporting documentation every month. I think that's very basic. And there's not a month that goes by that I don't have, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to talk about myself, but that's my example, is that I don't have questions about the consent agenda. And I've explained to Dr. Scarlett, I think, just as I explained to Dr. Adams, I'm not asking questions as a way of like trying to get at you. I truly don't understand sometimes what these things are. They're new or they've changed, or it seems like a lot of money for that, like I feel like that's why we have it on a 2-month thing. But I don't think, I mean, I guess I'm the only one sometimes. Not everybody has questions. There's some board members that never have any questions. And I just think that you learn a lot by diving into that stuff. And maybe that's just my own sort of intellectual curiosity. Maybe I'm doing too much, But I just think on a basic sort of thing, I think questions are good. I think that is really part of our job. And again, it's not like, I mean, sometimes it's in a slightly judgmental way, but most of the time it really isn't. It's just like, I don't understand this. Could this be written better? You explain this to me more? Because I'm not an educator. I've not worked in the school district. I don't know everything that is going on. All I know is that we're presented with this stuff. We spend a lot of time, many hours, twice a month, where we're going over this. I would just like it to be substantive. And the way it's set up, and there's so many things, it really is incumbent on the board members to dive into that stuff. And that is part of the job. It can be boring and tedious, but that is, I mean, if we don't do it, you can't, and I mean, we're doing this on behalf of the taxpayers. They're not responsible for reading every single item and going in there and asking questions. And that's the way I kind of look at it. I kind of think like, okay, when this passes, am I going to be able to explain it to somebody on the playground?
Yeah. Especially on those key issues and those key decisions that you have to make. And so is your thinking, and sometimes this is true and sometimes not, is that if people are not asking questions, that they have not really reviewed the materials. And
that's my suspicion, because when I read 75 items, there's a few on there that seem to be slipping through that like need a little further explanation.
yes. Anybody else thoughts on that?
I remember it used to be a time where, as I stated before, when we came in, that because there was so much entailed with what we had to do as a board, that we would kind of tag team in different areas of what we would focus on. Like some would focus on the consent agenda, some, would focus on different things, like especially looking in the book, like I said, you would focus on what your area was of expertise was. If it was things on the consent agenda that fell up under community or social service or what have you, then absolutely I will be looking at that like, yeah, I'm familiar with this organization. Let me read more about what this collaborative or this MOU is about. I know how to look at that, so on and so forth, because all of us had different areas of expertise. I, like Matt, feel the same way. This is a heavy load to bear, that it just seems overwhelming that you find yourself trying to navigate all the many pieces to the puzzle of what's going on, because this is a large district. And I think what becomes challenging to me, because I didn't kind of get to answer the two questions that you were asking, Janet, on the trust part or what have you. I think what becomes challenging for me is with the board, that you have board members. No, I don't trust all the board members. I feel it extremely challenging that, as I stated before on the last call that we had, that you find yourself, even if you don't read the consent agenda, even if you don't, understand the things that need to be understood or what have you, even if you're not putting in the time that you could be putting in the other pieces of what's going on within the district, but you criticize what we, are doing, or what I'm doing, or what other board members are doing, like that makes matters even worse. That makes me as a board member feel that other board members have some sort of hidden agenda as to what their reasoning for being on the board, is. And that makes it challenging for what I feel that we all signed up to do as board members. Like you can't, like I will hope that we're here to help all in the district and to help, improve and support Dr. Scarlett. I agree with what Ms. Jones is saying. And I do believe that this district has come a very long way. We have a long way to go. But I believe one of the things that you said, Janet, is relationship building. And I think that's where the challenge had come for so long, that there was no relationship building between the board and our outside partners. For so long, our outside entities was actually telling the story, as stated before, of this district. We felt that, or for so many years, the district felt that we had to take direction from the outside instead of us giving a direction. And I think that's what our elected officials are starting to see. I think the telltale sign, nobody expected it to happen, but for this board to come up with a resolution, for this board to do a moratorium, for this board to literally say, take a stand and do a lawsuit, like none of those things people expected this board to do. And that is starting to build the ultimate thing, and that's trust. So I feel the outside partners or stakeholders are seeing, the fight that this board has and the belief that we have in this district, or decision making for bringing in this superintendent that we're bringing in. Like, this is that trust factor. Yeah, I believe we are at a 5. I believe that in some levels we're at a 6. Can we get to a 10? I believe we can get to a 20, on how the people on the outside can view us as a district and as a board. But my concern is I don't trust all of our board. And I feel that at some point we do have to build our board in-house for them to understand that something Secretary Jones said to me, and I hope it's okay that I say this, but something she said to me was so instrumental, and she has no idea how impactful she is to me, because I've learned so much from her. But she made a statement to say it took her a long time to understand and know roles. And her statement was, we have to let our egos get out of the way in this fight of what we're doing, because this is a fight. And her statement was, I had to respect my role and understand my role, and I have to respect everybody else's role. And that's what I started doing, respecting and understanding people's role. Where Matt is strong, I may not be. Where I'm strong, he is. Where Donna's strong, like, we understand that. And I just think that that's the only way we can build and become a strong 7, to continue doing what we're trying to do. And that's fight for the district. But it's just challenging for me to be on a board and I don't trust the people that's around me. That's a hard pill for me to swallow, and that's challenging for me.
And I want to come back to you in a minute, Tony, but I want to give Emily or Donna a chance to, if there's anything you want to share.
Well, I want to say that when it comes to trust, I equate the board, I look at it like a flower. I've seen so many board members over the years come and go, even when we were not in power. I've seen a lot of people come and go. And when it comes down to the trust factor, I look at it as like the roles that we play. And when it comes down to it, I just feel like it's important that we understand our roles, and that we like, I know that I need to get in a lane, and I need to stay in my lane. And I don't feel any less important as a human being by being in my lane. But I know in my lane, I know the sun is going to shine regardless to wherever I am, because the ultimate goal is a great school district, a great student body, wonderful teachers, helping the superintendent. And so when it comes down to trusting everybody, I've come to the conclusion that let's see, being honest. Am I waiting on that answer? I don't always trust, but I just believe that we are going to make it and we are going to do better. And so in the end, it doesn't matter whether or not I can trust everybody, but I know I can trust me. That's the ultimate goal, is to trust me in the sunshine of doing the right thing. So that's the bottom line. I trust me first. I know that I'm not a puppet. No strings in my back, none of that. And I'm going to do part. And I really appreciate the board members that are working so hard. This is a hard job. I appreciate you, Matt. My God, that's so many hours that you and Tony have put in. It's like a regular job. And some other school board members across the country are getting paid a lot of money to be on the school board. And you guys you have at it. You are awesome, phenomenal. And I really appreciate that, because if you hadn't done some of the things you have done, we would not be where we are today. But this has been a long journey. And so like I'm trying to say, I guess I'm trying to be careful, like I always am, but trust. The first thing for any board member is to trust yourself. And doing the right thing, you'll always come out on top. Trust. I don't know.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm holding that. No, I'm holding that one in my heart, Donna, because I have never heard anyone make that statement. And I think you're right on track, about having that trust and that belief in yourself, that you're here for the right reasons and for the right things. And Tony, I'm going to go back to what you were talking about, and really this is for all of you, not just for Tony, but when you're talking about the fact that you sometimes cannot trust another individual, it usually comes down, again, I'm going back to Aristotle here, it usually comes down to it's because of some of their actions that you have witnessed or been a part, or had effect from. It is a part of, sometimes it is about the fact that they don't seem knowledgeable, competent, okay, really wanting to put in the work, or they are not there for the right reasons, that they are there for themselves and not for, for the moral imperative and for these kids. So if we were to go back and to look, and again, this is for all of you, but are there particular actions from the board members that you think have been influential and have influenced this lack of trust? And what are those actions? And then what can we do to change that? I feel like we're in therapy here. Okay. And in a way we are, but it's about strengthening your relationships, because trust is the result of actions and behaviors and competence. It is not something, it's not an entity just in and of itself. It is the result of, certain things. Okay. So do you remember my question? And that is that if in fact you have some areas of fractured trust, what were maybe those actions, or where you felt like somebody, showed lack of competence or lack of compassion or unification around the moral imperative? And then what can we do to change those? And Dr. Scarlett, I don't mean for you to not be involved in this conversation, but I know that you're the superintendent, I get it. And so there are roles, but but I just want you to know that you're welcome to add to the conversation too, because there may be observations that you have. Okay.
Can I give a vague answer, Janet? I know that's not what you want.
Sure, go for a vague answer.
Well, okay, so my book is completely marked and everything. You know, I love this book.
I know.
So there's a great list on page 148 and 149. There's a lot of great lists in this one.
Yep.
But the number 4 on that list for boards is the one that I have to remind myself all the time that this is such a key, and it's never forget that governance is a team sport. The board is a team. You may not like them. You may have even campaigned against some of them, but it's your team now. And if it wins or loses for children as a team, if the board succeeds, you succeed. If the board fails, you fail. I believe that in my heart. I hope that I try to live that. I know Donna does. I mean, I think she's shown me a lot. I feel like even in these last 2.5 years, we've been through a lot, and we've probably seen a lot of bad behavior, or I could give specifics, right, Donna? We've talked about it a lot. But I mean, I think that everybody has to buy into that, you know, and when people aren't buying into that it is the team sport, that's the problem.
It's vague, but it's great. Okay, you're exactly right.
What page was that, Matt?
That's one,
149.
yeah, 148, 149. It's in the tips for the trustees. This is chapter 9.
And the other one that I think, if I had to sum up what I think our problem is a board now, and I don't know if everybody agrees, but I mean, everybody has problems. And I do truly believe that when you say trust, I do trust that everybody is, you know, here for the right reason. Maybe that's just me just relishing the fact that it's now a 7-person elected board. But I mean, I know what everybody's gone through to get here. And you don't do that if, you know, you're not serious about working on this, I would imagine. But the other one was number 6, working for system-wide coherence. And we talked about this before. I think that's just a circumstance of timing right now. Just because, you know, we are transitioning, you know, we've given Dr. Scarlett this enormous task, and we're trying to support her and keep up with her at the same time. And it's only been a few months.
Right.
And, you know, and it says that, you know, everyone on the same page with the same understanding of the work and the strategic goals of the district ensures success of children. And I'm not sure that we're there yet, but we're working towards it, you know, and it's going to take everybody going back to that deep learning. Everyone's going to have to figure out, well, what are we doing to change this district, and what is our role? And that's a lot. That's a lot of, you know, like Donna said, listening, asking questions, figuring it out, and also, you know, giving your perspective, because we all come from 7 different perspectives, and that is all valuable. I mean, we're all stakeholders too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
going to the next page, I think the one thing, there's so much I love about Dr. Scarlett, but the one thing that I know that she is committed to is number 5, make the board winners, create value for them, help make the board experience valuable, engage the board, and then show them the impact of the district's programs on children in real time. And I've said this before, she's been working on doing that. I mean, I keep talking about our school visits, but I mean, they're just so amazing. And to go in there with Dr. Scarlett, to go in there with Dr. Borashade, I keep saying every time I go to one, it's transformative. Well, the last one, Dr. Borashade and Dr. Scarlett weren't even there. It was just me and Dr. Crapo and a counselor. And I mean, it was amazing. Like, I just learned so much in that little experience, and that was creating value for me. And I want everybody to have that experience, and it's there, it's available, but you got to be open to it and know how to take it.
And when you talk about you want everybody to have that, you're talking about your other board members?
Yes.
Your board members to have that too as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, I get it. No, we haven't gotten to chapter 9 yet, but yes, you have, and you know, but that's okay. And so when we're talking about the coherence part, which we did get to, in your reading, I hope that when you were reading through that you were going back to these 4 core goals that Dr. Scarlett and her team have developed, the ones around, reading and college and career readiness. And what I kept thinking of during this particular section is how that is so clearly defined for you now. But then when we looked at this book earlier on, a few years ago, that was not clearly defined. And so one of the things too that they talk about within that section, and I know that Dr. Scarlett's working on this because she has shared that you're going to see these kind of updates at every one of your board meetings, is about the continual kind of monitoring of those particular goals. And it may not be some academic data, or whatever, but it's about what are the systems and processes that she's putting in place that's going to help to lead to those goals. And not just those goals, but also her professional goals as well. I just think it's pretty exciting to see how she has expertly implemented alignment. And I took away from a conversation with her also about the fact that you cannot have coherence until you have alignment first. And that just stuck with me. And I'm going, oh my God, that she's exactly right. And so creating that alignment, though, is going to take obviously some time. But if you are united around those 4 core academic goals, and if you are united in supporting her with her 3 performance goals, then that's the coherence that's going to lead you, and that's exactly what they talk about within that piece. So, I hope your ears were burning, Dr. Scarlett, because I was going, yeah, okay. I was talking about you to myself, so is what I was doing, but you have that piece now. And so watching that move forward is going to help with the relationships and with the trust, because you're going to be united around those core goals and you're going to be talking about the same thing, God rest his soul, but I loved Bill Haas and his passion about literacy. But that was, that was his area. And so while there were some times that you're kind of going, oh man, you knew you understood his passion for that and being united about that. And he would always want everybody else to be seeing it, kind of the same way he did. Well, now you have a leader who's defining that for you, which is good. But there are always going to be times where you will disappoint each other. There will always be times where you might, hurt each other's feelings. You might step on each other, those kinds of things. That's just human nature. And that's just the whole kind of nuance of being a team. But if you come back to the fact that, okay, all right, Donna, said something mean to me again today, or I can see she's praying, but anyway, but it's easier to forgive and move on when you know that at her core, she's about the same things that you are. See, it's about being clear about all of those. So, but I'm still going to go back to this whole thing about, those 3 areas of trust, because your actions and your level of competence are probably the most important factors right now for establishing that trust with each other, and also kind of with your community as well. And so when I asked Matt about what are some of those actions, one of the things that he said, and I wrote it down because it's a good one, is about the fact that each of you in developing your competence is about always reading the consent agenda. All right. And asking questions for clarification if and when they're needed. But the other thing too, in order for you to develop your competence would be to strengthen your knowledge around the educational issues that, face your kids. I know that literacy is a huge one and that you're going to have a big initiative, after the beginning of the year with your whole community and your stakeholders on that. And so, one of the things too, that I'm just going to highly encourage you is to take your lead from Dr. Scarlett with that, but become knowledgeable, not of how do we teach kids to read, but become extremely knowledgeable of what is our district doing in order to address this issue. So that when you get those attacks, which you will, about that you're not doing anything, about literacy, that you have the accurate information to be able to share with your stakeholders. And that's going to take, communication between you and Dr. Scarlett as well. And the other area, and you're working, this is such a demonstration of it, is just to have the whole understanding of how does a board operate? What is good board governance? How do we move forward? Okay. One of the other areas that they talk about within this chapter is about there are going to be times when you disagree with each other. And so how do you move on when you disagree about a particular vote or a particular issue? And that's not rhetorical. I'm going to ask you to kind of address that. Oh, come on. I watched your last board meeting. Okay. So I know that there, were areas, there were a couple of decisions that you made that were really tough ones, really hard. All right. And, and I hope you got out of this particular book, pardon me, as I reached down to pick it up, the fact that just because a vote isn't 7-0 doesn't mean that you're not united and together about what's really important. So how do you move on? What do?
You accept the result of the vote and tell your people, this is what we voted.
Yes. And what if your heart isn't there?
It will come along when it needs to.
Okay. All right. And it is really okay to disagree with a particular vote, but because that is the vote of the board, then you move on and you support the processes in moving forward, with that particular decision. And there are lots of ways. They gave an example of, what you can say to your stakeholders when, it looks like you have, a vote didn't go your way, but it seemed pretty long and complicated. But a lot of it is just saying that, I shared my thoughts and my feelings and I shared my vote, and shows what my thoughts are. But the will of the board is this, and I am supporting, and my role as a board member is to support this decision. But then you got to stick with it. And it's hard, And so like in private conversations and in even conversations at home, you still have to try to make sure that you're providing that support for this decision. I one time worked with a board who they had some real issues with each other. And one question that I asked them was about, how do you talk about your fellow board members in private? What do you say about them when you are like with family or even with other friends? And it was very telling from their faces of the fact that you knew that they talked, disparagingly, I had another word in my head. I was trying to find the more professional word about their fellow board members to each other. And I hate to say it to you, you know, it's not that you have to love each other, you know, and kumbaya, but you can't do that. You know, especially with other board members or community board members. And remember, it's about the fact that you may disagree with an action, but not about the person. If you're still united, if you are truly all united, going back to my team sport kind of thing here that Matt brought up, if you're really united around the same core issue or moral imperative. Okay, I'm going to pause here for just a minute. Thoughts, ideas? You're just looking at me.
Oh, okay. So I was thinking there have been many times over the years that I've disagreed with my board on various decisions. And I might have voted one way and they voted another way. But I came to the conclusion that, just say for instance, like I was very much against closing schools.
Right.
And it was a really big deal in the community. But over time, I came to realize how important it was that I participated in listening to the community and trying to figure out better ways of increasing student population or better uses of our school buildings or things that would help improve the possibility of not having to close them. What could I do better? How could I participate and be more helpful in changing the situation? Instead of just looking at it like, oh, doom, it's over. You know, yeah, they voted this way and it's closed and forever. But I also started thinking, wow, this is a great opportunity as well. So to look at it a new way. So those are things that it opened my eyes up to, yeah, we can do something different, something better. Sometimes God closes one door to open up another one. So that's the way I've been handling that.
Yeah.
I'm glad Donna spoke up because I respect her so much because there's been a couple times where we've voted on opposite sides. There's been times I think where I've tried to talk her into something. She may have been trying to talk me into something. But the thing is, we always talked about it. You know, we'll call each other up if it's something that, you know, we are trying to understand the other person's perspective. And I've never been surprised by Donna's vote, and I've never thought, oh well, you know, in fact, it always kind of hurts me a little bit because I'm like, oh, am I right? am I wrong? And then like, oh no, now if it passes and Donna voted no, we got to make sure that this decision is the best it possibly can be because I don't want to let Donna down because, you know, she warned us about the pitfalls because she knows the pitfalls. So I mean, she's sort of the model of, you know, disagreeing with respect. It's always just so great. Now I don't want her to vote. I want us to be on the same side, and 99% of the times we are. But when we aren't, they're always big important issues. I mean, it's not little stuff. They're always big important issues, and we have had that discussion one-on-one and in public multiple times. And I think that is the teamwork that we're talking about.
Yeah. 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 You're loved, Donna. We can tell. So, you know, yay.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Miss Tony, were you going to say something, sweetie?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with Matt. To be honest, you know, when I first got on, and in the past 2 years, it actually has been like that. You know, sometimes some of us will vote, but we would have those conversations. We wouldn't vote all the way, always the same, but we will have the conversations, you know, have the discussions, like to talk it through. It was times like Matt said, that Donna and I would talk through different conversations. I mean, one of the votes actually bit me in the butt and came back and I had to deal with it this go around. But yeah, you told me so. I'll take that one, Secretary Jones. But it wasn't to the point where she didn't vote the way I wanted her to vote, or I didn't vote the way she wanted me to vote, and we didn't have. This is what I'm learned. This is what I've learned, and this is what I really got out of my first time reading this book and part of this whole discussion. The vote wasn't what Donna, I'm sorry, I didn't vote for what you wanted or for your program. You know, it wasn't, I knew enough to know this wasn't about Donna and something on her personal agenda. It was just something she didn't agree with. Just like she knew the same way, you know, for me. So it was more, and I'm not picking on you, Donna. Like it's times that Matt may vote for something that I may not agree with, you know, vice versa. But part of what I've learned out of this book and just being on this board when we first got on the board was it's nothing personal, like you said. It's when you're voting, it's your understanding, your perspective, how you looking at it, and what you know, as opposed to what that person knows. And they may see things a little differently. And I'm not making it personal if they don't go and agree with me. You know, we voted, we done with it, we moving on because we have so many other things to deal with and address. And that's what I think the challenge is with a lot of our new board members. And that's why I think this book is so important, because that's the level that they have to understand. It's really not personal. It's not something that I want per se, or Matt want, or Donna or anybody else want. This is what we are looking at and saying, how does it impact the district as a whole? And that's why we're voting that way.
Miss Emily, any thoughts? You don't have to. I was just wanted to make sure that you have
I
options.
have too many. I can't
Okay.
get them.
Okay, all right. Okay, if in fact, and the reason I'm pushing this is that in the next section of the book, they're going to talk about putting a lot of this into action. We can sit and talk about all of this and so forth, but until we put it into action, it really means little to nothing. And one of the things that they suggest within the book is about making sure that you have operating norms, you know, communication norms, those kinds of things, which I know that you have been working on, and that, you know, Dr. Scarlett and her team has been working on and creating as well. And so what I would like to be able to do in this next time that we meet is to be able to identify, if we were going to create a board governance handbook just for SLPS, only you, what would be the pieces that you would want to have included in it? And one of the things that I love about Dr. Scarlett is about the fact that her little copy of that governance book that I gave to you all is all ratty and falling apart, you know, because the woman uses it. Okay. And so, you know, that one that Dr. Scarlett has, and that I gave to all of you, you know, early last fall, I believe, is pretty general. You know, it's about just general kind of board governance and leadership and so forth. So I'm going to ask you, there's a little bit of homework here, is that because I'm going to send to you tomorrow another electronic copy of it, but I'm going to ask you to look at it and to say, and to be able, the next time we meet in January, to talk about what would be components that you would want in a St. Louis governance handbook. And it should probably then include not all, but some of, or the applicable kind of communication norms and protocols that you all have worked on with Dr. Scarlett. Dr. Scarlett, are you okay with that? Okay, you're nodding at me. Okay, all right. So I feel good. All right. And then, it should also probably have a copy of your board norms that you have developed as well. The other thing that I would like for us to be able to do and to include in it would be, they define norms differently than what, kind of I have in the past, because they define norms as being how you interact with each other. And so I would like to be able to maybe include in it kind of a listing of what you see as being norms that are critical to building trust. Do you get me? Okay. And that's why I'm asking these questions about what are those actions that each board member needs to demonstrate in order to be able to build and strengthen and sustain trust. And trust with each other, trust with your superintendent, and trust with your stakeholders. So some of the things that I have written down is about, going back again to what Matt had talked about with, just making sure that you are completely prepared. All right. I think probably one of the other ones that I'm hearing, although he didn't say it outright, is that you are present. And not just present physically at your meetings, but present, with your mind and in preparation with it, and both. And then I think the other one that, again, I kind of heard from him was about the fact of being willing to fulfill the work that is kind of assigned to you, whether that's in your committee work, et cetera, and so on as well. Am I interpreting that correctly, Mr. Davis? Quasi? Okay. And then one of the other ones is about being purposeful in understanding each other's perspectives. And what that means then is that you have to be willing to, I'm going to use Donna here on this one, but to listen to others. And even though you disagree or whatever, you have to step back and try your best to understand their perspective and their viewpoint. The other thing too is about, I think that if there are, I don't know if that's hurt feelings or if there are some kind of conflicts, amongst you at this particular time, that you are open to working those out. And you want to know what are there are restorative kind of practices and questions that you ask. And if you think, if you feel that you have been hurt or not heard or criticized or whatever by, other board members, of really sitting down and sharing what it is that is your perspective, listening to their perspective, and then finding ways to move forward and to move on. And I'm going to include in my email to you tomorrow kind of what those kind of restorative questions are. And those are good questions to use even when there is a disagreement amongst board members when these tough issues come up as well. Okay, we cannot change the past, but we certainly can change what's moving forward. All right. And so my hope is that all of you will be able, if I ever ask this question again about, do you trust each other, that all of you will be able to say yes. Okay, Emily, I saw your lips move, but anyway, okay. You okay with that? You all right with that? Okay, yes. Okay, good. All right. All right. So I know that our conversation has kind of steered its way more towards, trust, relationships, communication, all of those things, but all of those are, are important. So I'm going to pause, and we're going to kind of, because there's so many things within this book that we haven't touched on. And I just want to be able to make sure that you have the opportunity and that you can help guide the conversation instead of my guiding it into, if there are certain areas or certain things within these particular chapters that you really think you want to go back in and make sure that we touch on, or that we discuss. And in fact, it can be in the earlier chapters too.
I do want to talk a little bit about the onboarding, but I also think that that's important to have Sadie and Tracy here.
Yeah. And Matt, I know that that's chapter 4, and that usually comes after chapter 3 and before chapter 5. I do know that, but I moved that piece to the end because it's really more of, I think, one of those, because they talk about the need for a good onboarding process. It's one of more of those things of where, okay, we've talked about all this theory now, and here's about action that we need to do. So, and I noticed even the authors, when they wrote kind of a guide to this book, they even moved chapter 4 towards the end. So, so there we go. But norms and protocols, that's really a lot around chapter 6. The whole coherence piece, was the focus of chapter 5. There was a question in there, though, that I had that I think is kind of interesting. And I'm going to ask you this question then. And that is, this is in chapter 5, and it's about page 95 through 106. And they talk about the distractors that you have in order to do your good, strong governance as well. Let me get myself to that page too. And I was just wondering, is when you look at those, these are our distractions to coherence and unity. When you look at those particular 10, are there any that stood out to you, or that you think that you as a board might deal with the most?
What page is that again?
That's page 95 and 96.
I like number 8, the trustee, leader, or follower part.
Okay, talk to me more about that, Emily.
Because it is, I read chapter 5.
You did.
I read straight through. I can't do it.
I know you. Yeah.
But just, it is such a weird and tricky balance between, okay, we're the leaders of the school district, and yet we have one voice and one authority because we're working together. And like, learning how to balance that is definitely one of my biggest struggles. This isn't therapy, so I won't say why. But that was one of the ones that really hit me.
Well, and you come from the perspective of, and not that, other board members don't, but I mean, you come from a perspective of mom, right? And it is extremely hard to, and in fact, you can't, put that to one side. You can't, it's just hard. And I think that, though, that can become an area of importance for your board, because a lot of times these decisions that are made, sometimes you need a parent perspective. to help you, to guide, to figure out, and to maybe, look at things a little bit differently. And that's where, and, Tony, is your daughter still, she's, how, is she in school? Are you,
Both of
Mom.
mine, one is a junior in college, the other is a sophomore in high school.
there you go. All right. Yeah. And, well, I've met Tony's daughter, and she's a smart, wonderful, strong, okay, human being. And I'm sure that she, would have ideas and thoughts about how things would, impact her. But so we it's sort of like your board knows this, Emily, and they know that you wear this on your heart, and that is sort of kind of, and he talks about the difference between a kind of a, the zoom lens and the panoramic kind of view as well. But you have to navigate both. And I loved the term that they used in here on page 104, because it's another one I'm going to steal, but cooperative individualism. And it sort of looks like an oxymoron, doesn't it? Like jumbo and shrimp. All right. And so you have to be cooperative, but you also are an individual as well. And so I just loved that term. And I wish that I want to know more about it. They talked about it in terms of medical things with the Mayo Clinic, but I just thought that was such a wonderful term, that we operate under collective individualism. Anyway, that was just me in my head. I think the other thing that is hard with leader or follower is that, and we haven't talked about this yet, and I think we should probably talk about it in our next session too, is about the communication amongst board members, especially between board leadership and other board members, because sometimes that can be sometimes there is it just depends on how people operate, but it's really important that clear communication, because there are things that your board leadership will know first, okay, or conversations that they may be a part of, but it's really important about being able to communicate all of that to the other board members so that you don't have that them us mentality or operation. Do you know what I mean by that? Hello. Okay. All right. Okay. But I think your communication protocols that you have and that you have developed will help to guard against all of them. Okay. Any other piece out of these particular chapters that you think, oh, she didn't touch on that and we really need to? Okay, you're just staring at me, so I'm assuming we're okay. All right. Okay. You ready to end this early and get back to your family? Hello? Nobody's looking at me. Donna's praying. I know. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Donna. Okay.
I was nodding.
Okay.
Sorry. My phone angle is weird.
Oh, I get it. I understand. I know. I do. All right. So here is my question for you. We need to find a date in January that will work for you to be able to, for us to meet back again for the latter part of this particular book. So I didn't know if you had a particular date in January that you think would be good. I'm trying to look at my calendar and it's like there's something every single day, but there we go. I had originally thought on the 16th, but that is, the day after Martin Luther King's Day. I need to stay away from obviously your board meetings. And I don't know why I'm thinking that the 16th is also our. No, it's not. I thought it was. It's not our legislative forum. Anyway. So what do you think about Tuesday, the 16th?
We have a legislative meeting, but that's at 4 o'clock. So as long as those that are participating don't mind 2 meetings in an evening, knock it out.
Who else is in that with you, Matt?
Well, everyone's invited, but Dr. Scarlett and Tony.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay. Do you want to try for Wednesday, the 17th?
I'm fine with the 16th. That's the only thing on my calendar. So
My friends Tony and Dr. Scarlett. You okay, Miss Tony?
Right.
I can't hear you, my love.
You said Tuesday, the 16th?
Yeah,
Hold on, Miss Janet, you know, I have like 4 calendars.
I do know. So I know.
16th is a Tuesday.
Janet, how
Actually-
do you, can I, may I chime in? How do you feel about Saturdays?
Okay, you pushing it, Dr. Scarlett.
I was just saying that we're trying to schedule a board retreat, and so I was just thinking that it might be nice with everybody in person, so I'm just putting it out there.
That's the retreat, but the retreat is not live stream.
No, I would have to be there in person.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
I mean, that's okay.
You said the
Mind
15th. The 16th is good. Yeah, because our legislative meeting is Zoom and that normally lasts for an hour, Matt.
yeah, no longer than an hour.
Or is your retreat scheduled for January 20th already?
I believe that was one of the dates that we weren't supposed to do because somebody might be having a wedding anniversary or something.
Oh, one of those. Oh,
I
okay.
believe, but
Okay.
That month's a little precarious with coming back from winter break and Dr. King weekend, and you know what I mean? Yes. It was looking like sort of that last Saturday, I think.
In January?
Or maybe it was Founder's Day. Maybe it was
Oh,
something.
yeah. I was trying to say, my anniversary is in September. I have that's what I have. We're not doing, the retreat is not the 13th, right?
I know Mrs. Emery and Dr. Crapo were trying to work on a date. I know that there were some blocked out dates, so.
Okay, because I'll be at a volleyball tournament. Okay, so yeah, the 16th is fine if that works for the 16th works for me.
Okay. All right. Then we'll ask Ms. Van Noy to do another, and we'll do it virtual, another session like from 6:30 to 8:30 again. And then if you have I don't want to intrude, but I'm just offering. And that is that if you have a retreat in January and you want MSBA, me, any whatever to contribute, to be there, to support in any way, you just let me know. All right. And I'll put it on my calendar, but I don't mean to interject myself into that work. So
Anna and Emily, does the 16th work for you all?
I'm fine with the 16th.
okay. All right. Then we'll have Chief Van Noy set up the Zoom for the 16th. Okay. And I'm going to, in my email to you tomorrow, remind you of what your homework is. And that is that I want us to be able to talk about creating a board governance handbook just for SLPS. What are the core components that need to be able to go into it? And then to be able to talk about kind of the communication protocols and other norms that you want it to be included as well. Okay. Anything else for me for tonight?
No,
All right. Well, again, you know how I feel about you. So you just hopefully you have time to rest and like just do your normal job rather than, 3 jobs at one time. So, and Dr. Scarlett, looks like you're feeling better. I worried about you at your board meeting. I'm like, oh my God, I'm bringing the woman some chicken soup. I'm just, gosh, God bless you. Okay. Because there's so much crud going around and yeah. So stay away from germs. All right. All right.
So we're not a quorum, but I'll make a motion to adjourn anyway.
Thank you, Matt.
her form.
Second.
Second, Ms. Donna, can you call? We are met. Thank you very much.
Tony Cousins,
Yes.
Matt Davis,
Yes.
Emily Hubbard,
Yes, ma'am.
Donna Jones. Hey.